And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success Morning Coffee. I'm your host, Wes Tankersley. Doing this live every day, for the most part, every weekday, 7 o'clock Eastern. It's funny, I'm in Mountain Time. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, but I have to say Eastern because people don't really know what Mountain Time is unless you're in Mountain Time. It's kind of annoying. It is what it is. That's the way it works. But we are here, we are live, and we are chatting about daily life, setting goals, moving forward, what you can do if you're having some issues, things like that. And a lot of these things that I do, I work through myself. That's awesome, Kelso. 6 a.m. Central Time must be. Those of you who don't know how annoying time zones can be, like as a person who deals with time zones on a daily basis, I was trying to figure out where everyone's at. If people are talking to me, lunch for me is at a different time than in Easter time. Everywhere else, like time zones are crazy. And I don't know how many of you deal with them very often. I'm sure that a lot more people deal with time zones based on the fact that a lot more people are working from home because they found during COVID that they could do that. And then now COVID is gone, and why go back? And the other thing I got to figure out, this drives me crazy. It doesn't look straight. Whatever. It is what it is. Who cares? Time zones are annoying. It's funny because Nikki is in, our Patreon supporter, subscriber, is in Eastern time zone, and it is 7 o'clock there. Good for her because she doesn't have to wake up early, even though she does wake up early, which I do know that. What is up, Lynette, over on TikTok? Hey, I wanted to thank you guys for being here this morning. I've been talking about YouTube on TikTok, or about YouTube on TikTok, and trying to get it to 2,200 subscribers. And it was funny. I was talking to a friend yesterday a little bit about YouTube analytics and how they work and all that stuff. And I don't have very many subscribers. It's okay though, because it will become more. I have 2,184. Trying to get to 2,200 before the end of the week, which would be great. So if you guys can share this, if you want to follow on YouTube, it's going to be the platform where we can get more stuff out, because I can hit YouTube. I can hit Instagram. I'm trying to figure out how to set that up, because I need to set that up. You have to have like a restream key. But this program that I use to broadcast this out goes to like 4 different places. I cultivate the 2, but in the chat room, if you're in YouTube, you can hit the chat room over here and I can respond to you as they're popping up. I live stream on TikTok because I have the most followers over there, and I would like to kind of get them over to YouTube just for the live in the morning, not because I want you to just go to YouTube, but I do post all the shorts for the shows over there. I've noticed that I stopped posting as many shorts over on TikTok, mostly because I just don't have time. I forget to do it. I have the clips. I hate, and the other thing is I'm saying I just don't have time. When I do have time, I have to make time. I have to make the time, which we've talked about before. A lot of people saying I don't have time comes down to the fact that you just don't take the time. And that's where I'm at. Like, I can find some more time to do something, but a lot of times I've been getting distracted with stuff. I'll end up doing something, and then I'll forget to go take care of the other things. Like the studio, for instance, I was working on it yesterday. I had a phone call with a friend, which we'll have some news coming up on that too at some point in the near future. But I'm working on the studio. You can see some of the stuff. Like, I started organizing a little bit, but I've been waiting for some bookshelves over here, and they haven't showed up yet. Yeah, look at chicken, squirrel. They haven't showed up yet. Once I have those, I can start organizing that. You can see if you're watching on TikTok, I have like my corner bass traps set up in here, because one of the things is you want to have sound being really, really clean, and to get that for the audio portion of you want it to be really clean. Video, not so much, because people can see you, they understand the sound a little bit better. This is just podcasting stuff, so I'm sorry if I'm boring you. But these soundboards behind, they absorb the sound as it comes in, so it doesn't echo as much in here. These walls are actually treated. When I built the house, I treated these walls with quiet rock, which is basically 2 sheets of sheetrock, and that allows it to absorb more sound. It's not quite enough. But I have these, which are going to be going in the corners, that I haven't had a chance to install yet because I ordered them. A lot of times I have to order stuff from Amazon and it takes a little bit longer. It takes a couple days to get in. It shows up. So anyway, I have work to do. I hung these up. I was trying to decide if I was going to paint that wall black. I decided not to do it. I'm just going to leave it white. Got a couple soundboards I got to hang up there. I have stuff in front of me, all about sound treatment. Just want to get that right. And then I have all my stuff I got to hang up. I have tons of Giants bobbleheads that I need to hang up, memorabilia, things like that, posters from people. Lynette, thanks for the high bear. Bobbleheads, all this stuff that, when I get this thing set up, I'll give you guys a tour of the actual studio itself, just so you can kind of see what I'm doing in here. But I got to get the furniture. And there was a lot of things that slowed me down a little bit. But anyway, we're at 2184. I want to get to 2200 before the end of the week on YouTube. So if you have not joined the YouTube, head on over there and subscribe. Wes is Shaping Success at Wes Tankersley. If you're on TikTok, it's really easy. It's a link in my bio. Link in my bio anywhere to catch it. But there are every single live video on there, which, like I said, we've been doing a bunch. The live ones have been going. I think I'm almost to 1,000 uploads on YouTube, which is quite a few. But anyway, that is what is going on. I want to talk to you today about, I did a series on this before, and we talked about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a book by Stephen Covey. And a lot of times we forget or we don't see some of the things that people who are successful in what they're doing, what they do in the background. The funny thing about success is that, you decide what it is, but in the end, you have to do the work, right? You figure out what success means to you, and you have to do the work. People think that it just happens, like you just show up. And if it's not happening, you have to make adjustments and you have to figure out how to make those things happen. They're not going to happen on their own. You have to do the work. And 4 years ago, when I started kind of I guess I would call it my social media career, and then I decided that I was going to do a podcast, and I decided I was going to do all this stuff, I started reading books. And I was sitting in my barbershop, and he goes, "Hey, you should check out this book by Gary Vee." And it was called Crushing It, or Crush It, because he's got Crush It and Crushing It. I think Crushing It came out after. So I read that and I started looking at it and talking about it and trying to figure things out. What is up, Clarity Anchor? I started talking about it and I started figuring out, man, reading is kind of cool. And this is where I kind of get some of my ideas. But the funny thing is that a lot of these things that I do have been cemented in my mind already. And it's just repetition of doing them over and over again. I have these thoughts and things that I do on my own that have been with me, but it helps me to remember to continue to do that. And Stephen Covey, this book is, I'd look real quick, but I think it's written a long time ago. But he talks about these habits that are very effective, and there are things that you could use. And to think about it in a certain way helps you to be better at what you're doing. Okay? So here we go. It's interesting. Twisted T, thank you for subscribing. I have been looking at the subscriber count and here we go, squirrel, chicken. I've been looking at the subscriber count. It says I got 410, but then you go back in there and it still only shows 1. So it's like, what do? You want to shout these people out? Twisted T, thank you. There's a bunch of them, and it's just, it's like I want to do the shout outs and things like that, but then it's like they're not doing a very good job of showing us what that is. So anyway, back to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm going to read them out to you, and then I'm going to kind of go through them real quick with you, and then, because it's kind of an abbreviated version. If you want to go check it out, you can go listen to the podcast. I did a series on all of them. Did a couple of them. First one. Let's see. Hold on a second, because I know that that's not the right one. They've adjusted them a little bit. Someone has adjusted them a little bit. All right. Being proactive. That's one of them. We'll talk about that a little bit. Begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. Think win-win. Synergize and sharpen the saw. Okay? These are all 7 habits of highly effective people. It's funny because I don't remember that being that way, but whatever. Anyway. So let's talk about it a little bit. Okay? So being proactive. And like I was telling you a little bit earlier, there's a lot of people who think that just being, just doing it is going to make it work, right? So you figure out what the goal is, and then you're like, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to lift the weights 10 times and I'm going to get bigger. But that's really not what it's going to be, right? Like you have to do more. You have to be willing to do more. Is it enough? And then if you don't get the idea is to get stronger, right? So now you're not getting stronger. Now you're not seeing the tone. You're not losing weight. Whatever the goal in that role is not happening. So I almost feel like you have to start with habit number 2, which is begin with the end in mind, right? To understand what the goal is that you have to realize what you're trying to do. What is it? What is your goal? So that you can figure out how to re-engineer it, how to work backwards of what you need to do. So say being proactive is like, I'm going to go do this, but why are you doing it? So to begin with the end in mind, you're like, all right, I need to lose 20 pounds. So how do you do that? You exercise, you eat less, you change your diet, you do all these other things, you be proactive, right? So in order to do that, you have to begin with the end in mind. And the cool thing about these habits is I feel like you can put them anywhere in any order. You can do whatever you want to do with them. But what I have noticed, thank you for the gift, Twisted Tea. What I have noticed is when you begin with the end in mind, it puts you in a place to be proactive. And then after that, you have to start to think about that. So you have to list out the goals. You have to think about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, how you're going to achieve it, and then you have to put first things first. One of the things that, and I'm a bad example right now because I haven't worked out for a while, but I have been thinking about, when I was doing it, I did it for like 365 days in a row. And I had been working pretty hard to make things better for myself. And there's certain things that you can do. Okay. If you want to exercise every morning, you have to, this is a way to be proactive, which is the first habit, right? You have to figure out a way to do things, right? And so putting your shoes and socks by the door, getting your workout gear, putting it into the bathroom. You get up in the morning, you go in there, you go to the bathroom, put your stuff on. You've put it in a place where you have to see it, where you have to do it, and then you go do your exercises, right? That's being proactive. So you're trying to figure out a way to do that. So putting first things first, it's, like I said, it's synonymous with being proactive. And then you go out and you try to decide, well, what is it going to take in order to do this? I need to, a lot of people like losing weight. If we're talking about losing weight, is calories in, calories out is like the number one thing. Well, what am I doing to do that? So I start to count my calories and I figure out how many I eat in a day and I figure out how many I burn in a day. You can do it really easy. You can get a resting metabolic rate calculator on your computer, and you can figure out how many calories your body is burning. You figure that out, then you figure out how much you eat, and you subtract one from the other. And if you have more, if you're eating more than what your body burns in a day, you need to figure out how to burn more or eat less. Real simple. Now, that doesn't always work for everyone, and everyone's body's different, and sometimes it takes a little bit of more work, but that's part of being proactive. And when you begin with the end in mind and you put first things first, you can decide where I want to hit first. And if you look at it as a big goal, like I need to lose 100 pounds, right? It's harder to just go and lose 100 pounds because you're thinking about losing 100 pounds. So maybe you start with, I'm going to lose 5 pounds this week, or I'm going to lose 5 pounds in 2 weeks, or I'm going to lose 5 pounds in 3 months. And it's funny I say that because some people can lose 5 pounds in a week. Some people can lose 5 pounds in a month. Some people can lose 5 pounds in 2 months. It just depends on what the work that you're willing to do. Now, if you set a big lofty goal that you're going to lose 5 pounds in a week and you don't, then you can be disappointed. So it's a little bit easier to set a realistic goal and lose it gradually. Then the next goal is think win-win, right? A lot of times we don't think about winning. We just think about what we want. And so you have to decide that no matter what, and here's what it says right here, seek mutually beneficial win-win solutions on agreements in your relationships. Valuing and respecting people by seeking win for all is ultimately better long-term resolution than if only one person's situation has gotten their way. And this doesn't really, it's funny how these are great. You have to read the book to understand this a little bit more, but think win-win in solutions. Like try to find a way that you can be happy and someone else can be happy, right? How are you going to do that? So working out, let's see, it's not about the end result, it's about the process in which you take to get there. Exactly. How are you going to get there? How are you going to get there? But thinking win-win, you have to realize, like, so I want to exercise every single morning. My wife needs help with the kids. How can we both get this handled? And I've made the choice to get up earlier and do this now while the kids are asleep so it doesn't affect her. So she gets her help with the kids. I get to work out. We both win. Find a compromise, right? And you don't always have to find a compromise. And sometimes when you're the only one who is making the compromise to help other people, it's not really worth it. But you have to decide if that's worth it. I told you recently that I read the book Be Useful by Arnold. I read it. I always say I read it. Just remember, I'm going to say I read it even though I listened to it on Audible. Called Be Useful, and it's by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he talked about listening, okay? A lot of times we don't know how to listen, okay? Seek first to understand, then be understood. This is number 5 habit, okay? When I think about that, what I think about is like a lot of times we don't know how to listen as people. We don't know how to take in the information because we've got some preset thing in our mind that this is the way that it's going to be. And just because you listen to someone and you think a certain way doesn't mean that you have to think the way that they think. However, a lot of times it is helpful just to listen. I think about this with customers all the time. When I walk into a customer's house and I start talking to the customer about the things that they do or what they're looking for, I sell them the product and sometimes they're unhappy with what they got. Either I didn't explain it well enough, or a lot of times what I have found is that I walk into a house and it's a disaster zone because they're moving in, right? And this is one more decision. And it happens every single time. Walk into a house, boxes everywhere. They're overwhelmed with moving. And I can guarantee you everyone's overwhelmed with moving because I'm overwhelmed with moving and you can just see it. They have all these things that they have to do. And then one more thing is picking out the window coverings that I'm going to sell to them. They may be sitting there listening to me. They may be choosing their color. I may have said everything that I need to say for them to understand. They could have, number 1, not understood it, or number 2, just didn't hear it because they're looking around and they're going, oh man, this house is a mess. I need to get this done. Okay. So when you come into a home and someone is upset, I just ran into this yesterday. They were upset about something and I'm like, okay, we'll get it taken care of. Let's just figure it out. You know, I'll come back. We'll look at the color. I'll explain a little bit more, whatever. And 99% of the time, that person just wants to be heard. They hear what you need to say, and then they end up deciding that either they were wrong or they understand a little bit better or they feel the situation because you've listened to them. So try this when you're in a conversation with someone first. A lot of times you want to interject and you want to talk. And you want to respond back to them. Listen first, okay? Try listening first. After you listen, then you can talk. Then you can state your case. But you need to be willing to hear what they have to say before you interject. Allow them to be heard, okay? And a lot of times you'll realize that maybe you might have the same goals, maybe you disagree, but just because you disagree does not mean that you can't be friends, okay? Synergize. This is one thing that's really cool too. Okay, so Synergize, we talk about this all the time. Surrounding yourself with like-minded people, being around those people who are like you. It doesn't mean that you have the same opinion about things, okay? That's the thing. It doesn't mean that. Just because you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and it's funny because I get these comments all the time when I post something like this on TikTok or somewhere else. It's like the comment is, no, you don't want to be around the same people because those people don't challenge you. And it's like, no, that's not true. Those people will still challenge you. I have a very good friend that I talk to every single day, and he challenges me on everything, and I talk to him every single day. And it's not that he challenges me, but he plays the devil's advocate, right? He tells me, that's cool, man. That's awesome, but have you thought about this? And then I start to think about it, and guess what? I listen, and then I respond. And it's amazing some of the things that you can learn when you just listen, because you think that your way is the only way, but there is possibly another outcome to the situation. And that's where we get to a point where we can all kind of synergize, right? We're willing to listen to the other person's side. We're working with someone who they may not have the same opinions, but they think like we do, and they're willing to continue to do the things that challenge you. But too many people listen to those challenges and they walk away because they feel like there's a differing opinion. Those people that you cut out of your life sometimes may just be having a discussion with you to push you forward and help you to realize that there's more to the conversation than just what you're doing. Okay? And this is the last one. And like I said, this is a real abbreviated version. If you go through and you look at the podcast, you can go through there and you can find where I broke down every single one of these, like I did a whole episode on them. Sharpen the saw. Okay? You have all these new habits. Okay? You have all these new habits. They may not even be new habits. They just may be something that you've done, but you didn't realize you're doing it. Okay. So now you have all these habits. How do you put these habits into order? How do you make them work? How do you get the things done that you're trying to do? You sharpen the saw. You have a saw, and now you have to continue to do the work. You have to continue to put those habits into, it's morning. Put those habits into work. Just make it do it. Make it happen. You have to put those habits. You have to continually do them to sharpen each tooth on that saw so that you have the most effective tool that you need. Okay? So that means remember. Okay? Be proactive. Begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. Think win-win. Seek to understand, listen, and then synergize. Find those people that will make you feel better about yourself. Be around those people, and then continue to do it. Work harder. Continue to sharpen the tools that you have. All right. So that is kind of the 7 habits. If I was anyone who was trying to work to be better at what they're doing, I definitely would read that book. Again, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's funny. When I first started reading books, like I told you, I was reading Gary Vee's Crushing It, and then I started getting on social media. I hear your teacher voice. What's up, Jen, over in TikTok? Good evening. Good morning. Jen is on the other side of the world in Australia, so it is evening over there. But reading that book, like I heard this 20-year-old kid goes, dude, what do you do to get better? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, what do you do? Like, what do you read? And I'm like, I don't read. Why would I read? Like, I mean, the last thing that I read, and it was funny because it just popped up, and I think it was like 12, 14 years ago, was I read this series called Left Behind, and it was like a 14-book series, fictional, but could be truth, about the rapture or whatever. Really good, really sucked me in. But I don't read fiction very much anymore because I'm really impressed with real life, not impressed, but inspired by what other people do. Kind of like why I do this, because I want other people to realize that they can do whatever they want and they have to be willing to work at it, but this is where you can do it. So anyway, he's like, here's 4 books I want you to read. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I ordered the first one, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's a couple other ones. 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. Trying to think what the other ones are. But anyway, he's like, I challenge you to read a book a month. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll figure it out. So what I did was I started reading them, and then I realized I started listening to them. I could get through them more because I drive around all day, every day, and finding the time to sit down and actually read the book, which is probably better for you. But I lose attention span. And so, thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. So I started listening to him, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to listen to him. So I bought a credit on Audible. Once a month, I get a audio book, and I listen to it. So I go through 12 books a year for the most part. Sometimes I go through them a lot quicker and end up with more than 12, and I have to buy more credits because I want to listen to more. So reading is one of those things that is important. But what he said to me was, because I have a master's degree and I have a bachelor's degree, so I have 2 degrees. He goes, how many books did you read in college? And if you're taking a full load of classes, you usually have 4 or 5 books, and you're supposed to be reading those books. You know how many of those books I read to get my bachelor's and my master's degree? Shocker here, 0. Okay, and maybe you had to read those books in order to get through your degree if you had one, but I think that I had so many life experiences and I knew so much just from learning it a different way that I didn't have to read them. So it's crazy how much money you spend on these books that you don't even use. But I have learned more in the last 4 years from reading books that are not required, that are not something that like someone's forcing me to read, to write a paper in order to do whatever. And the knowledge is from reading those. Pain Train, what is up, my friend? It's been a long time. But did you? Like, you had to read, okay? Nikki says I was an English major. I had to read. Did you, though? Because I feel like, and this is where it comes, like someone's forcing you to check a box in order to get a degree, right? And I found the things that I needed to find in the books. I did not actually read them. I had to write a paper. I would skim through it, and I'd find a piece of it, and I would write that, and then I would talk about my life experiences through that, kind of like what I do here. Like, I'm looking at this, I've read through it, I'm abbreviating that version. So I feel like every day I do this, I'm writing a paper. And that's the thing. Like, I don't know. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about this, Nikki, because I want to figure out if I am right. Like, if you really thought about it, did you have to? Yeah. Scan, study material. Exactly. So my master's degree was writing papers all day, every day. That's all it was. Physical education. And then my master's is in educational technology. So it's all in education. But anyway, it's funny. If my professors knew that, they'd probably be like, they all complain. But it's just a way to make you buy the book. It's make you do those things. Like, you could learn way more from other stuff. So, yeah, exactly. Christina B says the same thing. The bachelor's of marketing journalism, and I feel like I still only scammed. I think that if you really think about it, yeah, exactly. I'm telling you, Nikki, if you really think about it, you probably didn't have to. Anyway, I've rambled enough. That is it. Like I said earlier, if you guys are joining me on TikTok, please go over and subscribe to Shaping Success with Wes Tankerson on YouTube. There's a link in my bio. Help me to make that grow, because that's where we're trying to get the most growth. And we can always hang out here on TikTok, because I am not going to not do it. But have a great day. We got 2 more of these. If you want to tune in tonight on Instagram, my friend Jay and I do an Instagram live at 7 o'clock Pacific, 8 my time, and then it's 10 Eastern. If you're up that late, some people go to bed a little bit early. But thanks to Nikki for Patreon supporter. I got to go and look through the subscribers on TikTok, because I feel like it says I have 4 right now, but yesterday it says I had 1. I don't know what's going on with TikTok, but we'll figure that out. Till next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.